Welcome to Battleground, the fight for your vote. It's Wednesday, November 5th. It's the day after the election, and the voters have decided Zohran Mamdani is the next mayor of New York City. And so now the work begins. It's no longer about who will be mayor, but about how he will govern and deliver on those promises that he made to the people of New York. Later in today's show, we're going to talk to a former congressman about his take on the results and other races of the night, and then the impact that they all have on national politics. But first, of course, let's get to the very latest news. And joining me now is Craig McCarthy, City Hall bureau chief for the New York Post. Welcome, Craig, back to the show on the day after.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know we're all a little tired. I was up late covering this. You were up late covering this, but it's over. It's over. How are you feeling after this very long, sometimes weird, but always fascinating race for mayor? If you could sum it up, how would you?
Chaotic and dizzying. I mean, and as of now, it's everybody's saying, "Oh, wait for the election and then it'll be nice." It's like, no, now is the transition. They have to appoint people to all the positions, all of the I mean, already this morning, the FDNY commissioner has tendered his resignation for next month. So we know there's going to be so many positions that need to be appointed and people that are going to
Yeah.
be advising. So I mean, really, like this, the work just starts for the mayor, but it's gonna just start for the press now too.
Yeah, you're right. There's going to be so much to cover now, and it's going to be so many firsts, and it's going to be really interesting. There are going to be so many storylines. I know another one that I'm going to have to cover, I'm sure, will be what I believe the Trump Mamdani reality show
Yeah.
that is about to air starting this week, next week. I mean, I think Trump has been like itching for Mamdani to win for this reason, so he can start making him a useful foil, a punching bag. And I think that's going to be a huge storyline too, that, I don't know that the voters of New York City voted for, but they got it. They got it with Zohran Mamdani, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't know that going into this, I mean, then they haven't been reading the news or seeing anything that's been going on. But if you voted for Zoran Mamdani, you expected him to foil to Donald Trump
Yep.
and vice versa. So I think
Yep.
right now is going back and forth is, I mean, listen, the Republican Party, not just Donald Trump, is already
Mhm.
casting Mamdani as the new face of the Democratic Party. Democratic Party, the establishment, Jeffries,
Yep.
Schumer, all those guys are trying to not have that happen, but this is a storyline that's going to get fed when it
Yep.
comes to the Republicans and the Democrats going against each other in not only the House races next year, but a very big gubernatorial race in New York State.
In New York, yeah, and we'll get to that. But let's get back local. What did you make of Mamdani's speech last night? His acceptance speech.
Well, I mean, I was taken aback at first of the jabs at Cuomo, but then realizing afterwards he hadn't even called him to concede the race. I think that
Yeah.
put that a little bit more in perspective.
Hmm.
I thought it was a very defiant. I think he came out and listen. We should always note he got 50.35% of the vote. So he believes he has a mandate, and he came out there saying he had a mandate to do it, and it was the first city that would be powered by immigrants, built by immigrants, and now run by an immigrant in a clear shot at Donald Trump.
I think you're right. There were shots at Cuomo. There were shots at Trump. He was a lot more defiant than I think some people expected. Some people expected, you won handily, maybe a little gracious, but you're right. Cuomo did not, from what we know, even call to concede.
Even one handily, I will kind of push back a little bit. It
Go
is
ahead.
kind of unprecedented that somebody on a third party line, a ballot
Yeah.
line that no one's ever heard of, that you had to dig through on a ballot that was filled with 10 other candidates or 10 other
Yes.
lines, that he got 43% of the vote is pretty incredible. So, yes, he has a mandate because he got over 50%, but there's still a big portion of the city that did not vote for him with that.
One of those voting blocks were Jewish voters. They went 2-1 for Andrew Cuomo. That's a big problem for Zohran Mamdani. Maybe he doesn't see it that way, but I know New York and I know New York Jewish voters. That could be a big problem for him. How would you think he is interpreting those numbers in the exit polls today?
I think there's two different things that are going on currently in the city, right? They're trying. It's the old guard of the voter blocks, right? Like the black
Mm.
and the Jewish voting block right now is showing that it's not as powerful as it used to be. When somebody
Mm.
like Andrew Cuomo would have handily won this election, I believe, maybe 10, 15 years ago because of the makeup of the city. Eric Adams even showed us this 4 years ago where he was
Yeah.
campaigning in South Asian communities, Muslim communities, going into these mosques and doing this. And it's the same playbook that Zohran Mamdani took, except he is from India, from South of Africa, a Muslim. I think he was able to galvanize that, even if they're much more conservative. So I think it's this new more just even the voter blocks, like the old guard of the candidates, voter blocks as well as the old guard versus a new guard.
50.4 or 50.3%, wherever it really shakes out. I don't know that you can call that a mandate. I don't know. I mean, is that a mandate?
I mean, listen, he went into this election and did into this race on Tuesday saying if he was just elected, he would have a mandate to do what he needs to do. I know people are going to say that he doesn't have a mandate. I mean, he's going to argue he does because of a majority. But again, I will keep pointing to the fact that it is unheard of that Andrew Cuomo, a third party candidate, gets
Yeah.
43% of the vote.
Okay, Craig, I've got more questions for you, so don't go anywhere. There's more Battleground NYC after the break. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. Let's get to back to more news from the race with Craig McCarthy, City Hall bureau chief for the New York Post. Craig, this race made a lot of history. Um, in all the ways, right? Who Zohran Mamdani is. He'll be the first Muslim mayor, the first South Asian mayor, the youngest mayor in over a century, but also in terms of who voted and who turned out. Record numbers of people turned out. And according to Politico, more people voted for mayor than in any race since 1969.
Yep.
How in New York? How significant is that?
Well, it's massive. I mean, listen, we saw this coming with the early turnout of more than 730,000 over the 9-day period. I mean, this was the biggest turnout since 1969, which also notably was the last time there was a competitive three-way race for the general election. What's even more incredible about that is that in 1969, there were 3 million people registered to vote and there was
Mm,
2.4 million votes. Right now, there are more than 5 million people registered to vote, and only
yeah.
2.1 came out to vote. We haven't got the final count yet, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's historic. Let's not take away from that. But I think like even going and taking aside everything is that Mandani did, whether you like him or you hate him, there was a lot of protest votes and there was a lot of
Yep.
getting the vote for him. So they brought out a lot of people.
Let's talk about city council. Because the mayor's going to have to work with city council very, very closely. And so, before we get to whether Mamdani can do that, talk about some of the wins and losses over there. Anything surprising?
I mean, Christy Marmorato losing up in the Bronx, it wasn't a complete shock. I mean, she was the first GOP member to win a seat in the Bronx for, I think, some 50 years. So it wasn't
Mm,
surprising that flipped back. The rest of everything kind of held, strong of what we expected. Justin Brannon's staffer took his seat, so it stayed blue. Bob Holden had two of his staffers running against each other on the Democrat and the
mm.
Republican line. So really the makeup didn't change that much. I think the question now with the council is going to be who's going to be the next speaker.
Sure. And before we know who that is the city council stacking up to be one that you think would be helpful for Mamdani, or will they get in his way?
I mean, as of now, the progressive, which is a progressive bloc, which is a caucus, is about 17 members. They haven't been
Mm,
able to coalesce around one person. They've been fragmenting votes into certain ways. And, the question is going to become like, do you want somebody that works with City Hall or do you want to see somebody as a check and balance to Zohran Mamdani? And they're
right.
trying to figure that out right now. And I think if we look back 4 years ago when Eric Adams tried to put his finger on the scale, it set the tone with the council for the entire tenure of his first term. And so I don't know if Zohran Mamdani wants to do that, but he's been awfully, open about being out there campaigning with Crystal Hudson, who has put her name out as one of the top people for council speaker.
Interesting. He'll also have to work with Albany. Have you heard anything from the governor's office about this race?
I mean, the governor endorsed Zohran Mamdani, so you would expect her to put kind words out. She's going to support him. The question is going to be, what can she do going into an election year? She
Mm-hmm.
can't raise taxes and then run against Lee Stefanik, or if she will, she'll have a very hard general election next year. So it's I think Albany wants to work with him. They want to see his brand of, I guess, this new wave of politics. They don't want to run away from that. But I don't know
Yeah.
when the rubber meets the road in the next session how close they're going to get here.
So I was over at Fox 5 earlier this morning for a hit, and all anyone was talking about was Jessica Tisch, who is the NYPD police chief. And Zoran Mamdani has said he will keep her, which I think assuaged some fears that, he was going to clean house at police. But she hasn't said whether she'll stay on and if she will stay on for how long. And everyone wanted to know how long will she stay on and for how long will she stick around for this? Because that would be a huge, huge change for the city and a huge headache for him. Anything you can tell us there?
No formal offer has been given to her. There's been a conversation of let's talk after the election. We talked about this prior, you and me, of that this is Democratic
Mhm.
Party wants to be a big tent. Either of those are holding either side of that tent up. I mean, they are the farthest possible away on so many issues when it comes to Albany bail reform, raise the age, any of the criminal justice reforms from 2019. Jessica Tisch has been asked to stay on, from what I
Yep.
understand, from governor, from Hakeem Jeffries, from all these other people that are trying to make sure that the city stays on the same path it's going right now. So
Yeah.
she doesn't need the money to work. She's an heiress to a big,
Mm.
big company, and she doesn't
Yeah.
have to. The fact that she's there now, I think she's answering the call to do those things. So I really don't know which way she's going to go at this point.
We don't either, but that'll be a huge thing to watch for. Craig McCarthy, thanks so much for being here, for all of your reporting over the course of this show. It's just been really great to get your on the ground insights. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. Okay, when we come back, former Congressman Steve Israel is back to give us his take on the New York City mayor's race and some other big elections around the country. Don't go anywhere. More Battleground NYC after the break. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. And joining me now for the bigger picture is Steve Israel, former New York Congressman, director of the Institute of Politics and Global Affairs at Cornell University, author of the upcoming book, The Einstein Conspiracy, and bookstore owner. Welcome, Steve.
It's always great to be with you, Essie. Thanks for having me back.
There's no one I'd rather spend the day after the election with than you. To be honest, no offense to all of our other
Thanks.
wonderful guests, but no one understands how this all goes better than you do. So I just want top lines. What'd you think of the big Democratic wins last night, both in the city and also in New Jersey and Virginia?
Well, indisputably, a very good night for Democrats, but critically, a lesson has been taught to Democrats across the country, and that is when you field common sense centrist candidates like Mikey Sherrill in New Jersey, Abigail Spanberger in Virginia, when you field candidates who are capable of getting crossover voters, Republicans voting for a Democrat, you win. Full stop.
Yeah.
And I hope that the Democrats learn that lesson, and I think they do. I think they will recruit candidates who are more common sense centrists, candidates who talk about the things that people are talking about around their kitchen tables, the cost of the food and the quality of life. When Democrats do that, they do well.
And Zohran Mamdani did that. He is a progressive. He's not a moderate. He's not a centrist, but he did that. He focused on those issues that mattered to the most people. I'm worried, and I imagine you're a little worried too, though, that Democrats will take the lesson away that moderates, centrism isn't necessarily that important across the country because someone like Zohran Mamdani with, some of his far left extremist ideas just won. What would you say as a caution as we're heading into midterms?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I profoundly disagree with Zohran Mamdani on the Middle East, on issues like Israel. Profoundly disagree. Secondly, look, I think what he's proven to us is he could be a generational talent in terms of campaigning. I mean, he just revolutionized digital strategies. He had an amazing ground game. He did what was necessary to do to win Brooklyn, New York. But as I've said before, when it comes to Democrats taking the majority in the House, they have already won Brooklyn, New York. They've got to win Brooklyn, Iowa.
Right.
They've got to win in Pennsylvania. They've got to win in Arizona. They've got to win in other states. And the policies enunciated by Zohran Mamdani that may play well in the 5 boroughs of New York City, or maybe 4 out of the 5 boroughs of New York City, it will not resonate with voters in more competitive battleground states. The fact of the matter is, you know what the recipe for Democrats? It's not, do you campaign like Zohran Mamdani or do you campaign like Abigail Spanberger in Virginia? You campaign like both.
Right.
Depending on what electorate and what media market you're in.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think the lesson is less ideological and more issues oriented, and how you talk to voters and where you meet voters.
That's right. That's key, and that was my mantra when I chaired the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. You meet voters where they are, and then you bring them along if you can. You don't preach to them on what you believe. You've got to connect with them. Zohran did that. So did Spanberger. So did Sherrill and others.
I think that is so key. There was, I think, for a lot of 2024 and even previous races, there were the issues that Democrats really wanted voters to care about. And then there were the issues that voters really cared about. Sometimes they overlapped, like in the 2022 midterms, democracy and abortion overlapped. It's what Democrats wanted to talk about, and it's what voters cared about. But in 2024, they didn't care so much about democracy. They cared about gas prices.
That's exactly right.
And I think Democrats have to figure that out. And maybe these races sort of gave them a roadmap for that.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, what happened on Long Island, though? I know it didn't go as well as it could have, maybe, for Democrats.
Yeah, and this, I think, bears some additional scrutiny. It's only the day after. We have to go through the numbers, but this does worry me as a Democrat. An extraordinarily good night for Democrats around the country. Republicans did very, very well in Nassau County. They had very healthy margins. Now, I've heard 2 analyses. One is that the Republicans, Bruce Blakeman, the county executive, Republican county executive, he won by 10 close to 10 points. I've heard some people say, well, it was narrower than we thought. But I wonder whether there was a Mamdani spillover effect in Nassau County, which is in that media market, and whether that anti-Trump sentiment powered some
Yeah.
voters to vote for Democrats, but whether there was a lot of motivation for people to vote for Blakeman and others because of that Mamdani effect. The effect was less pronounced outside of Nassau, but it's something that Democrats need to watch.
That's really interesting. And we're going to have several Mamdani effects. There's the effect it's going to
Hmm.
have on the city, and will there be some flight of businesses and people, families leaving the city because of Mamdani? There are going to be several of those, but that's one really interesting one. Okay, Steve, I've got more questions for you, so don't go anywhere. There's going to be more after the break. Battleground NYC. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. One more time with Steve Israel, former New York congressman, director of the Institute of Politics and Global Affairs at Cornell University, and author of the upcoming book, The Einstein Conspiracy. Steve, you and I might differ on this. Let's talk about Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. In hindsight, I mean, I thought all along their attempts at like distancing themselves from the front runner and nominee looked silly, and we're probably all for not, because Republicans were just going to tie Mamdani to Democrats anyway. But I know from where you sit, you understand what they were doing and what their job was. I'm wondering now that it's all over, if you what your take on how they navigated this is.
When you are the minority leader, any kind of leader in the House or the Senate, you have many different constituencies. You've got your members in the Democratic caucus, both in the Senate and in the House, and they have lots of different views and put pressure on you. You have your candidates. Some say you can't go near Mamdani, and others say you should have endorsed him 6 months
Yeah.
ago. You've got donors, and so you've got to manage all of those pressures. I don't think anybody in the next month is going to be talking about whether Schumer or Jeffries should have endorsed earlier, should have
Yeah.
endorsed at
Yeah.
all. These are tactical decisions. They have one thing and one thing only on their minds right now, SC, and everything is filtered through that one thing, and that is, how do we win the midterm
Yeah.
elections? Every calculation they make is based on that one existential
Yep.
question.
Yep. It's an important point, because from where I sit looking at it, I have all the judgments. But I understand there's a strategy here, and I understand what they were doing. Okay, let's move on to someone else, might be a little uncomfortable. Andrew Cuomo. This did not go the way he wanted it to go. It didn't go the way he wanted it to go in the primary. It didn't go the way he wanted to go in the general. I don't think he wanted to be running this race at all. He wanted to be thinking about 2028 and the presidency. We know why that didn't happen. Is he done in politics? Can he come back from this?
I would say that Andrew Cuomo doesn't have 9 lives, he has 90. I would never rule him
Oh,
out,
wow.
count him out, minimize him, or diminish
Okay.
him in terms of a future. And so, no, this didn't go as planned. This is not what he thought he'd be doing. But this guy is really good at the rebound and throws some pretty sharp elbows on that rebound. So I wouldn't count him out of a future at all.
He does. And I take that, I really take that point. But the throwing elbows, I wonder, I know that that's his style. I'm wondering if you think it hurt him in this race in particular, because it looked, I think, to a lot of voters, especially young voters, like in trying to get Eric Adams to drop out, Curtis Sliwa to drop out, Trump to endorse someone, it looked like he was trying
Yeah.
to rig it
Yeah.
and throwing elbows, and
Yeah.
like he wasn't just, and then changing his party to run in the general. Like it didn't look like he was just like along for the ride of the democratic process.
Yeah, you know the old saying that drafting legislation is like cooking sausage. You don't want people to know how it's
Yeah,
made.
of course.
I think you're right. Same thing applies. There was just too much out there about these manipulations, and he had no control over
Yeah.
that. You know, that stuff got leaked. Maybe it got leaked by Trump. We don't
Yep.
know. But I do think that that wasn't helpful. And then I also have to say this is very much a generational election. You had massive turnout of younger voters who probably agreed with Andrew Cuomo on many
Yeah.
things, but Mamdani captured them. He resonated with them. He reminded them of them.
Yeah.
And Andrew Cuomo had a much harder path reminding them that he understood their
Yeah.
concerns.
Fair point. Staying focused in New York, Governor Hochul, as you know, endorsed Mamdani,
Yeah.
but she's got a challenger, we expect, in Republican Elise Stefanik. This is going to be a real soap opera, I think, between Stefanik and
Yeah.
Hochul, and Mamdani will be a central character in it, don't you think?
Yeah. Very much so. But I will say this. Do not discount the possibility that Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman runs.
Okay.
You know, he has shown an ability to withstand an anti-Trump tide. It was there in Nassau County again. I think it was kind of offset by an anti-Mamdani tide. You know, and by the way, Elise Stefanik is a friend of mine. We're bibliophiles. We read the same books. But I think that last night was a pretty good night for Bruce Blakeman. So I wouldn't ignore him, and I wouldn't assume that this is all Stefanik's to, you know, to have. You know, I think this is where governing is important. This is where, you know, let's put the campaigns behind us.
Yep.
Now, Hochul and Mamdani have a strategic imperative to just govern
Yep.
well, to get things done, to take some of the sting
Yep.
out of their reputations and the caricatures. And that's why it's going to be so important that they work together. Focus not on what's happening in the Middle East, but what's going on in the Midtown Tunnel.
Right.
Those are the issues they're going to need to focus on.
Such an important point. And before I let you go, this is what I was thinking about when I was thinking of today and having you on. I know you're not 100% supportive of Mamdani. I know you have some fears about Mamdani. I know a lot of New Yorkers have some fears today. They're waking up. I know a lot of New Yorkers are waking up psyched, but some are waking up a little nervous and afraid, whether they're Jewish voters or they're just worried about socialism and some of these promises. What would you say to those voters?
Look, everybody has the right to wake up feeling safe and feeling wanted in their community. I think it's going to be okay. Not because I'm overly optimistic, but I think one of the things Zohran Mamdani is going to learn from day one is you got to govern. I mean, this job is overwhelming. It's the hardest job in America.
Yes.
You got to get the scaffolding, you know, that's choking off our streets, off the streets. You got to do something about traffic. You got to pave the potholes.
Right.
And I think he's going to be focused on that, which makes things a little bit better for everybody.
Well, I like ending on that note of optimism. And I thank you so much, Steve, for coming on this show over the course of
Thank you, Essie. It's always a
this
pleasure.
season. Yeah, you've been really, really helpful. I love getting your insight. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, and we'll see you back here tomorrow through the rest of the week for more in-depth conversation, context, and reporting here on Battleground NYC.